Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome. So we just lit here in Eretz Yisrael the third light of Hanukkah. It's going too fast already. It's been wonderful so far. So as part of our series, Fundamentals of Kabbalah and Chassidut. So for those who have been tuning in, last week we finished 3 classes about Eretz Yisrael, the holiness of the land of Israel. And tonight, because it's Hanukkah, we're going to start another mini series. It could be 2, 3, or 4 classes. We'll see how it plays itself out, but we're doing it on light, because Hanukkah obviously is all about light. And so we're dedicating this class to learning about light. It should be mentioned, and in fact, it can't be emphasized enough, how important it is to sit by one's Chanukiah and meditate on the lights. This is considered the most auspicious, one of the most auspicious times to meditate for the whole year is to sit and meditate on the lights. Many of you have my book, The Lights of Hanukkah, 100 Meditations. So there's lots of material, what to be meditating on, what to be thinking about. But it's very, very important. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to start the idea of learning about light. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect 3 ideas here. Light in creation, light in the menorah, because even though we're used to lighting the Chanukiah, which is of course 8 lights, and the Shamash is the 9th, but we're doing this because they lit the menorah in the temple. So as important as it is, the symbolism of the 8 candles, the main symbolism is from the menorah itself. So we're going to be learning about light and the menorah, and then we're going to take that and learn about light and Hanukkah. So we're going to start with an idea that will run through everything that we learn about light, and that is there's a paradox about light. We're going to start to see it tonight. The sages intuited that there's something mysteriously paradoxical about light. And they framed it, as we'll see already tonight, they framed it in the paradox between infinite light and finite light, or spiritual light and physical light, between revealed light and hidden light. These themes run through everything that is in the Torah about light. There's like a built-in paradox between infinite and finite, spiritual and physical, and the idea of hidden and revealed. Now, I'm going to mention this right off the bat, that science has done a masterful job of harnessing the electromagnetic energy. Our entire world, I mean, if you go back 120 years ago, there was no electricity. Our entire world is based on electricity and the energy of different frequencies of the electromagnetic field. So if you just think about it, just everything we do is connected to electricity and is connected to light. But if you ask a scientist exactly what is light, there's a built-in paradox. And the paradox, this is what the sages intuited but they express it in a different language. But today in science, most people know this, that one of the greatest paradoxes of all science is that light is both a wave and a particle. And in a sense, they're mutually exclusive. When light is measured or manifests itself as a wave, its particle nature is hidden. And if light reveals itself as particles, as photons, then the wave function of light is hidden. To this day, science considers this one of the greatest paradoxes, because how can it be that light is both of these and they, like, in a sense, cancel each other out? So I'm just mentioning that now. Hopefully at a different time we'll go deeper into this. But right from the beginning of creation, we'll see in the Torah there is already a built-in paradox. So we know that light is the first explicit creation. Already in the first verse, it says, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. But we learn that God created the world through speech. And that's why we have a tradition that there are 10 expressions of speech that brought creation into being. And the first one is light. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, Vayhi Or. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Bereshit, in the beginning, is called a closed expression, because it doesn't say Vayomer Elokim. There should be Shemayim and Oretz. It doesn't use the word to say. But the first time it does is by light. And what we see immediately, Rashi tells us, the classic question, everyone knows this question. It says in the Torah that the sun and the moon were not put in their orbits until the fourth day, and that the sun would be to light the day and the moon at night. So everyone asks, so what is this light on the first day? If it's not the light coming from the sun, what is it? In our world, when the sun isn't shining, and let's say we didn't have electricity, it's pretty dark out there at the new moon. Let's say the moon is covered. So we all know that the answer that is given is that the light that's created on the first day is a spiritual light. It is the light behind creation. Now, we've learned this before. We now know that matter is energy. But then the question is, well, what is energy? Where does energy come from? So our answer is from the light of God. That is what is animating energy. So this is the light of the first day of creation. And Rashi tells us, based on the sages, that God hid this light away for the tzaddikim in the future. God hid this light away for the righteous ones in the future, so that evil ones would not be able to use this light. So what's important here already we see that this incredible light, spiritual light, infinite light, is created on the first day, but we're told immediately it's taken away. But what's very significant is it doesn't really say it was taken away. It says it was hidden. So if something is hidden, we can find it. If something is taken away completely, then there's no way to find it. But the language is that this light was hidden away. So everyone asks, where was this light hidden? So we're told it's hidden in the Torah. That's why the verse says, Ner mitzvah v'Torah or. A mitzvah is like a candle, and the Torah is light. You know, each mitzvah is like a little candle, but the light is the Torah itself. So we're told that this light was hidden in the Torah. Now, if we don't learn Torah, and if we don't learn Torah for the right reasons, then we won't be able to access it. But if a person learns Torah with a purity of heart and a purity of mind, if they're perceptive enough, they are tuning into the infinite light of the first day of creation. Where else is this light hidden? We're told in the Menorah in the temple. And that's what we're going to get to. What does that mean that this light was hidden in the Menorah? We're also told that it's hidden in Shabbos. That's why the tradition is that women light candles to usher in the Shabbat. And everyone knows this motion that women do, like this, as if they're bringing infinite light into the Shabbos. It's a very, very beautiful idea. And the other place that we're told is in the Chanukiah, in the lights of Hanukkah. And that we're going to get to. So here already we have this paradox. As soon as this light is created, we're told that it's hidden away. And we'll see this theme repeat itself many, many other times. But there's another paradox here. Is the end of the first day is Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Voker, Yom Echad. And there was evening and there was morning, day one. Doesn't say first day. It says day one. And then it Yom Echad, one day. It doesn't, the other ones are more Yom Sheni, the second day, Yom Shlishi, the third day, Yom Revi'i, the fourth day. So what does it mean, one day? So Rashi says that on the first day, the angels had not even been created yet, and there was only God in the picture, as it were. That's why it says one day. Only the oneness of God was manifest on the first day. Sarah, we're going to get to that, about the 36 hours. We're going to get to that at Hanukkah time. So here we see that this light is created. So we would think that this light represents the oneness of God, which of course it does. But if you see immediately, if you read the rest of the first day, the light and the darkness were mixed together. And God separated between the light and the darkness. And so here already we have the seed of physical light, and also still the infinite light. We'll see how this plays itself out in the Menorah and in the Chanukiah. So this Oraganuz represents, the Oraganuz means the hidden light, represents in a certain way the physical light that we have is as close as we can get to the spiritual light of the first day. In other words, physical light is paradoxical because it has certain elements of infinity in it and certain elements that it's a physical creation. So already the first day is called Yom Echad, one day, but already we have heaven and earth. We have Shemayim v'Aretz. These are two opposites. The Torah begins with a bet, number 2, which means duality. So here already we have the paradox. And this is, some of you have learned this with me before. This is what's called 1 becomes 2 in order to become 1. God is only the oneness of God is before creation. As soon as there's a creation, there's a 2. There's something, as it were, other than God. But then our mission, our task is not to get confused by the plurality of the world and realize that it's still all one. And remember, we learned also that's the creation of Adam. Adam was male and female together. Then they were separated into 2. And then they come together in one flesh to come back together. So it's the same thing with the light also. The light is created and it's one light, but immediately the Torah says that it was mixed with darkness and there had to be a separation. So 1 becomes 2, but ultimately everything is the light of God. So we can see the seeds of the paradox that thousands of years later, science identified as the wave particle function of light, which is a total paradox. Okay, so now let's go to the menorah, because the whole holiday of Hanukkah, as much as we are focusing, like right here on the Chanukiah, 8 lights and a shamash, but it's based on the menorah. So we might ask, well, what is paradoxical about the menorah? It seems pretty straightforward. You have a candelabra of 7 candles. What could be paradoxical? And yet the Midrash says that Moshe was able to receive the instructions from God of how to build the Mishkan and was able to give it over to Bezalel. But when it came to the menorah, it says that Moshe could not understand how to make the menorah. But the instructions in the temple are very clear. So everyone asked, what was his problem? What didn't he understand? And in fact, God just explained it to him again. Moshe didn't understand. So the Midrash says that God said, take the block of gold, throw it in the fire, and out came the menorah. This is a Midrash, however we understand that. But the idea was Moshe had a problem with understanding the menorah, but it wasn't the physical construction. As you're going to see now, the menorah is actually very paradoxical. The first question is, whose light is the menorah representing? Is it God's light or is it Israel's light? In other words, the menorah in the tabernacle, is it supposed to remind us of how God is shining light into the world? Or is it that since we're partners with God, that it's our task to bring light into the world? And so we're lighting the menorah to remind ourselves of what our task is. So in any question like this, it's either this or it's that. So there are a number of midrashim that bring them together and say it's really both. It is God's light. It does represent God's infinite light, but at the same time, it represents man's physical light. So here, Moshe is trying to understand, and actually one of the midrashim says, Moshe says, how are these little lights of the menorah to represent your light? Nothing can contain your light, God. Your light is so infinite and so awesome. How can we represent your light? So now we see what Moshe, why he had a little bit of a hard time understanding the function of the menorah. But most of the midrashim come and say it's really both. That God says it is my light, but I'm giving my light to you, and I want you to light the menorah. So it's really a partnership. Now, another idea, and this runs through a whole discussion of the Sphero that I believe we even started last week. Are the Sphero, the 10 Sphero, now these 10 Sphero, the 10 emanations through which an infinite God creates and maintains a finite universe, are these Sphero, are they light or are they a vessel? Are they a vessel for God's light? Or are they light themselves? Of course, it's God's light, but the sphere itself is light. And we answer the same way. It's not everything we can answer like that. There's certain things that are light, and there's certain things that are vessels. They're not necessarily the same thing. The higher you go in the worlds, as we're taught in Atzilut, in the highest of the four worlds, we're told that there's no differentiation between light and vessel. That is a dualistic concept that we have in the lower worlds. That's again the big bet of Bereshit. This world is full of duality, full of opposites, full of polarity, bipolar world. So is the menorah, does it represent God's light, or does it represent our making a vessel for God's light? So again, the answer is going to be really both. But still, to understand that on a very, very deep level takes a lot of contemplation. It's very similar to say, if light is a wave, then how can you tell me it's also a particle? And if it's particles, how can you tell me that it's a wave? So the same thing, if the light of the menorah is pure light, then how can I say it's a vessel? And if it's a vessel, how can I say it's light? So obviously, if we go up and up in the worlds, we can put them together. We can put them together. Another paradox about the vessel, this is brought down by Shimshon Raphael Hirsch in his commentary on the Chumash. A brilliant commentary. I saw Marvin in the background there, and I know that he's been learning from the commentary of Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. So his commentary on the menorah, it's a very simple, but it's very deep. He says, in the Torah, it says that you had to craft the menorah from one block of gold. In other words, nothing was soldered on in the menorah. They took, if you can imagine the size of this block of pure gold, and they had to carve it out. Nothing was extraneously put onto, glued on, nailed on, screwed on. It was all from one block of gold. So Rabbi Hirsch says gold in the world and in the Mishkan represents something very strong, unmovable. And yet, the actual formation of the menorah is like a tree. It has its middle trunk and 3 branches on either side, and the decorations of the menorah are flower-like. They're like bud-like. So Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says the menorah is representing both at the same time, an unmovable energy that is always changing. So now if you think about that, that becomes very paradoxical. If something is unmovable, how can it be changing all the time? And if it's changing all the time, how can it be unmovable? But that is one of the paradoxes of the menorah. And as we said from the beginning, this is a theme running through everything in the Torah that has to do with light. Now we have another thing. The menorah, again, is coming from one block of gold, and yet its 7 branches represent plurality. Just like unmovable and change, at the same time, it represents oneness and plurality, because everyone knows that the number 7 represents, especially in Torah, complete cycles of plurality, but cycles of plurality. So obviously the middle column in the menorah represents Shabbat, and the 3 on one side represent the 3 days before Shabbat, and the other 3 represent 3 days after Shabbat. Shabbat is the middle. What's interesting is, and it's not wrong, but we all tend, for good reason, to think about 6 days of work, and the culminating 7th day is Shabbat. But interestingly enough, that in many quarters, the way that we learn Torah is Shabbat is in the middle. We learn the Parsha 3 days before, Shabbat is in the middle, and then we continue to learn it until Tuesday. And then we start with the new Parsha. Now, many people don't do it that way, and it's totally legitimate that Sunday already we're learning the new Parsha. That makes perfect sense. But I'm just pointing out that there is this idea that not only is Shabbat at the end of the cycle of 7, but it's also in the middle. That's one of the symbolisms of the menorah, is that our lives revolve around Shabbat. Shabbat is the middle of our whole lifestyle. I mean, it's Tuesday night here. Okay, we're still in COVID, but Tuesday already, everyone's thinking, who are we going to invite for Shabbos? Or are we invited out to Shabbos? When are we going shopping for Shabbos? We're already planning. Everything revolves around Shabbat, especially if you go away, let's say on vacation. Before you can plan a vacation, the first thing is, where are we going to be for Shabbat? Everyone knows that. It's like, you just can't just go on vacation and like on Friday, like, oh, what are we going to do for Shabbat? So our lives really do revolve around Shabbat. Okay, just a few more things about the menorah, and then we're going to get into Hanukkah. So we also have the idea of the oneness of God and the oneness of the Jewish people. And yet we know that Shlomo HaMelech actually put 10 menorahs in the first temple. There weren't just one menorah, there were 10. So usually we think in the Mishkan, there was only one. And if you have one, that means you have 7 branches. If you have 10 menorahs, you have 70 branches. So Shlomo HaMelech wanted that one menorah would represent Israel as being a unique nation, but there were also 70 branches to represent the 70 archetypal cardinal nations. And that ultimately the temple is meant for everyone. That's why the prophet Isaiah says that in the future, he says in God's name, that it will be called a house of my prayer for all peoples. This is God speaking. The way God sees the third temple is that it's his house of prayer for all people. So again, we have the uniqueness of Am Yisrael and the 70 nations at the same time. And so the last thing I'm going to mention is, we already mentioned on the first day that this infinite light of creation from the first day was hidden away. So look what happened to the menorah. The menorah, according to our tradition, is still hidden away from the first temple. The menorah that the Romans took, and they made a fancy arch for it, is not the original menorah. The original menorah, according to tradition, is still buried somewhere below the Temple Mount, and Bezrat Hashem will be found. That is the Arch of Titus. It will be found. But here, just like the infinite light on the first day was hidden away, the menorah was hidden away. Now, when we go to Hanukkah, we're going to see a reversal. What happens? The Maccabees come into the temple, and they have to clean it and purify it because the Greeks had defiled it. And as everyone knows the story, they're ready to light the candles, not the candles, but the lights of the menorah, and they couldn't find any pure oil. So the story is that they found one cruse of pure oil with the chotemet, the seal of the high priest, pure oil, because that's all you can use in the menorah. And now they were able to light it. But look what happens here. The menorah, which was revealed for approximately 800 years from the time of the Mishkan to the time, no, actually around, let me get this right, around 800 years was revealed, and then it was hidden away. And Hanukkah, the oil was hidden away, and then it was revealed. So again, here we have this theme with light of revealing light and hiding light. And this tells us a lot. Everyone asks, why is God so hidden? Why is God so hidden? So one of the answers is if God would shine the full power of his light into a finite vessel, well, just like in the world of Tohu, the vessels broke because the original vessels of creation could not hold that light. All the more so if God would like let loose with his full revelation of light, we're told actually the finite world would cease to exist. And so God is hidden in a sense, even though sometimes it hurts very much. We want to be close to God. We want to see God. We want to experience God. But it's actually for our good that God has to be somewhat hidden, or there would be no world. There simply could not be a world. There would be no place, there would be no vessel that could hold this infinite light. We are told at the time of Mashiach that the revelation of God's light will be much stronger than it is now, and that our vessels will be stronger than they are now to hold it. So now, this is something that someone wrote in the chat. When we talked about the infinite light of the first day that was hidden away, we're told that throughout creation, the light did shine. And it even shone through the first Shabbos. And we're told that Adam and Chava, they merited to experience this light for 36 hours. 12 hours on Yom Shishi, the sixth day, and 24 hours of Shabbat. And then they were expelled. They sinned already in the sixth day, but God allowed them to stay in the Garden of Eden for their first Shabbat. And we're told that they experienced the infinite light for 36 hours. So at the beginning of the class, we said that we asked, where is this light hidden away, this infinite light? And we said the Torah, Shabbat, the Menorah, and the lights of Hanukkah. So that is one of the main meditations of the lights of Hanukkah, is we are lighting a physical light. It's not all that unusual. We light candles all the time. We use fire all the time. We use electricity all of the time. But in the Chanukiah, if our consciousness allows us, we can experience the infinite light. Now, there's a great hint to this, because the word for light in Hebrew, or, equals 207. And the expression for infinite in Hebrew is Ein Sof. Ein Sof equals 207 equals light. So light and Ein Sof, light and infinite light, physical light and infinite light, there is a bridge between them. And it all depends on our consciousness if we can experience it, if we could realize it, if we can integrate it. And so on Hanukkah, if you add all the candles together, 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 + 6 + 7 + 8 equals 36. So we're told that these 36 candles of Hanukkah, they represent this infinite light. Now, one of the main verses to meditate on during Hanukkah is Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The light of God is the soul of man. Obviously, this takes a lot of contemplation. The candle of God is the soul of man. And this is very connected to the Hasidic teaching that the soul is a chelek Eloka mima'al mamash, an actual part of God above. Well, an actual part of God is infinite. So the soul has the possibility, has the potential to connect to the infinite, to the eternal. And so these are all very, very important ideas for contemplation during Hanukkah. Now, remember, the original Midrash says that God hid away this light for the tzaddikim in the future. And so what's interesting is along with this idea of this light shining for 36 hours, we have this concept that at any time in history, there will be 36 tzaddikim in the world. That there has to be 36 tzaddikim in the world. There's actually a number of traditions. One is that there are 36 hidden tzaddikim, and there are 36 revealed tzaddikim. So here again, we have the hidden and the revealed. And one of the midrashim says that when it says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. So the midrash says, what does it mean, and there was light? It says, these are the deeds of the tzaddikim. In other words, tzaddikim, righteous people, and we all have a spark of a righteous person, through our good deeds, through our good thoughts and good speech and acts of loving kindness, and being a mensch, being a good person. So we bring this light into the world, this infinite light. And therefore, there has to be 36 tzaddikim at any time, because the light of God is everywhere, but symbolically, there has to be 36 individuals that are manifesting this light in the world. And so when we're lighting the candles, we need to connect to that part of ourselves that is righteous, that part of us that is pure and has the ability to shine light into the world. So what's interesting is after Adam and Eve sin, so if you remember the story, they covered themselves and they hid in the garden. He was just hiding again. And God calls out to them and says, Ayeka, where are you? Obviously not meaning I can't find you. Where are you hiding? Of course, God knew where they were. But this very potent statement, Ayeka, where are you holding? What have you done? Also equals 36. Also equals 36. So here, there's a deep connection. I'm only going to mention this. If we had time, we could go much deeper. But there's a Hasidic tradition that the sealing or the delivery of the decrees from Rosh Hashanah are extended all the ways to Hanukkah. And it's by the Hanukkah candles that we can take stock of, well, have we put into reality what we said we were going to do on Rosh Hashanah? And so by the light of the Hanukkah candles, it's as if we're opening up the sealed letter with the decrees for this year. And of course, through uteshuva, utefila, utsedaka, mavirim et roa gezerah, through tshuva, through repentance, prayer, and charity, we can cancel even the most evil decree. And so Hanukkah is like giving us another chance to get it right. Another important connection that's brought down is one way you could read Hanukkah is Chanu Chaf He. Chanu means they rested. Chaf He means 25. They rested on the 25th day of Kislev from all the wars, and they were able to rededicate the temple. That's one of the ways that we understand Hanukkah. Chanu Chaf He. They rested on the 25th day. So it's brought down that the 25th word of the Torah is light. When it says, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, that word or is the 25th word of the Torah. So we could read Hanukkah that after all of the wars, actually real wars, they were able to rest from fighting from their enemies. And by relighting the menorah, they could now reconnect to this spiritual light. Now, I want to point out one other paradox, actually an incredible paradox, is everyone explains that the Greeks represented pure logic and Israel represented logic, but with a place for transcendence, things that we can't understand, for faith, for miracles. And it's always discussed that there not only was there a physical war, but there was a spiritual war for the hearts and minds of the Jewish people. Because for those who know the history, a good part of the Jewish people were incredibly drawn to Greek culture, Greek logic, the beauty and the science and the athletics and the theater and the music. It was just like today, it's a huge draw. And so there was a battle for the minds and hearts of people. And so throughout history, especially in the Gemara, and we'll see right now, everyone knows that there are two opinions how we're supposed to light the Hanukkah. Beit Shammai said on the first night we should actually light 8 candles, the second night 7 candles, the sixth night 5 candles, all the way down to there's only 1 candle left. Beit Hillel said, no, we should start with 1, the way we do it, and then add every night until you get to 8. So here you have the ultimate opposites. Like either it's this or it's that. You can't do both. So it's true. The sages chose that the way we do it is like Hillel. But what they said about this disagreement and all disagreements in the Talmud, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. These and these are the words of the living God. It's not that Shammai was wrong. He had very, very good reasons why he thought we should start with 8 and then go to 7 and then go to 6. And his reasoning was very logical and made a lot of sense. And Hillel's made a lot of sense. But when it gets down to it, you have to choose one or the other. So in Greek thought, in much of Western thought, it's either this or that. Don't tell me they're both right. It's either this or that. It's black and white. We don't look at it that way. A Jewish worldview is highly paradoxical in its very nature. These and these are the words of the living God. So the reason I'm mentioning this is until about 100 years ago, science appeared to be the epitome of pure logic. If you can't see it, don't tell me about it. If it can't be experimented, if it can't be recorded, don't tell me about things I can't see. It's like I want facts. It's pure logic, and we can measure everything. Then comes Einstein and begins to describe the world in a way that is completely different than the way we experience it. We don't experience the world the way Einstein says it is. But then it got even more complicated with quantum physics. Quantum physics, the whole thing is paradox. The whole thing is really is beyond logical. It's like something else. And that's why there's still so many paradoxes in science, because the way that science describes the world is so incredibly different than the way we experience it. And so it's so it's like the epitome of paradox that Western culture, which prided itself on verifiable science, now science has become like so beyond logic, and that's actually what science is today. So here we have, it's really the epitome of irony, the way science has like kind of turned everything upside down. Okay, I want to bring one more idea, and because the next time we're meeting is after Hanukkah, and this is just one of my favorite ideas about Hanukkah. So we said already that we light 36 candles. But if you add the shamash, 36 and 8 is actually 44 candles. So it's brought down, and we don't have time now, but there's what's called straight light and returning light. There's a light that comes, as it were, from heaven down. And then there's a light that we return to heaven. Another way of saying this is there's an arousal from above and arousal from below. There's certain energies that are coming from without us, and there's certain energies that are coming from within us. And so if we have 44 lights, so we have these two different aspects. Some call it an inner light and an outer light. So if you multiply 44 times 2, you have 88. 88 is the gematria of Nachal. Nachal is a stream or a river, a Nachal. So the Arizal, about 500 years ago, still, and there's no right or wrong here, but Ashkenazic Jews, when they say the bracha, they say, Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah, to light the lights of Hanukkah. The Arizal took out the word shel, and therefore almost all Hasidim and Sephardim as well say lahadlik ner Hanukkah without the word shel. So the whole question is, why did the Arizal take this out? So there's two reasons. One is, if you take the initial letter of the three words without the word shel, lahadlik ner Hanukkah, the three letters not in their proper order spell out Nachal. So why did the Arizal, what was so important that you should have an acronym of a river? So first of all, by taking out the word shel, if you include the word shel, there are 14 words in the blessing. If you take out the word shel, you have 13 words. 13 represents the 13 midot of rachamim. the 13 aspects of compassion. So, and the 8th one of the 13 is a nachal also. Notzer chesed la'alafim. He forms chesed for thousands. In other words, he dispenses, he bestows loving kindness on thousands. But it's the first letter is spelled out nachal. Notzer chesed la'alafim. But we still don't understand exactly what the Arizal is getting to. What is he hinting to with this river? So it's a very simple thought, but it's so powerful. So he said like this: when we light the lights of Hanukkah, and this, in a sense, puts together almost everything we've been learning tonight. We're lighting a physical light. But by we return our light to God, and God sends down a nachal of light, a waterfall of light. So the Arizal taught that when we light the candles of Hanukkah, we should visualize, we should imagine, we should experience standing in a waterfall of light and having it just wash over us and cleanse us. And this waterfall is the 13 midot of rachamim. That's why the Ari wanted there to be 13 words in the blessing. So this waterfall of light is, we're drawing down and experiencing God's compassion upon us. This is just such a beautiful idea. It's just so powerful. So everyone can do this. Is just after lighting the candles, at some point, after looking at the candles for a few minutes, just close your eyes and imagine being engulfed, being washed, purified in a waterfall of light. So we're going to end with one other idea here. Is we began this class trying to connect Torah ideas with science, the Torah ideas about the paradoxes about light, and science's paradox about light being a wave and a particle. So a beautiful thing of a waterfall of light, because water is a wave, but light is also a wave. And so this kind of puts it together. This is very common in songs or poetry, this idea of a waterfall of light, but there's something very deep about it. Is on a certain level, that is the essence of light, is water. It is flowing like a river. So this is a beautiful, beautiful meditation, one of many, many different types of meditation. So I just want to end with a bracha that the lights of Hanukkah enlighten our minds, light up our hearts, inspire our souls, and that we take this light and spread it to the whole world.